everyone and welcome to my channel. If you are a subscriber, I am going to upload another video on this day as well for you guys to watch instead, because this is obviously not like my regular content. I am simply making this video because a little over a year ago when I was arrested for a DUI, I was frantically searching the internet for what to expect and I couldn't come across a video like this. The only reason I put it on this channel instead of like making a burner channel or something is because this channel is monetized, and as you'll see throughout this video, a DUI is very expensive. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about my entire process of getting a DUI, from the arrest and jail time and everything to all the different fines that I had to pay, what DUI classes are like, the license options that you have in terms of having a restricted license and so on. But I'm going to tell you exactly how much I paid and how much each cost was along the way. And because DUIs and the punishments and legalities around it vary state by state here in America, I'll let you know up front that I live in California, so this is what you can expect if you got arrested in California. Each state is different in terms of strictness of how they treat a DUI. I hear the most strict state I think is Arizona, and I think the most lenient is Oregon. I'm not sure, but what my counselor told me in my DUI class was that California is essentially in the middle in terms of strictness on a DUI. So even if you live in a different state from me, this might give you the average experience of what to expect. And then you could just look up if your state is more or less strict than here. I'll also be leaving timestamps down below in case you want to skip around or revisit a section and all of that. I always do that in my videos. But to begin with, I guess I'll begin with how I got a DUI. So I got my DUI at the beginning of 2022. I essentially got in a fight with a friend while we had been drinking heavily, and I used to be extremely impulsive and just make very rash decisions without thinking and throw alcohol into the mix, and you can guess what happened? Basically, we got in a fight and I was like, I'm leaving, blah, 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 you can't stop me. And he's like, I'm not letting you leave, like you're too drunk, blah, blah, blah. And we got into another fight about that, and I was like, I'm just going 5 minutes away to my friend's house, blah, 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 which was a lie. And I instead meant to drive to my house, which was 45 minutes away. And about 25 minutes into the drive, I got pulled over because I was swerving within the lane. There was no one else on the road or anything like that. No damages happened. Nobody was injured. If you do have damages or injuries, obviously you have bigger problems. This video might not help you too much. I think things will be very different for you. But in my case, I was going the speed limit. Nobody got hurt, no property damage whatsoever. But basically, the police pulled me over. I did the field sobriety test, balancing on one leg, all of those kind of things they make you do. I was arrested, even though I thought I did pretty well. I mean, balancing on one leg, I can't even do that when I'm sober, honestly. But I did smell like alcohol and everything, and whatever. They're the police, they're allowed to do what they want. They said I have to either take a blood test or the breathalyzer. I asked if I had to pay for the blood test if I took it. They said no, so I decided on that one, which I'm really grateful for because it bought me basically an hour and a half of time of like sobering up. So my blood alcohol content was lower than it would have been otherwise. But I was handcuffed, put in the vehicle, driven to a hospital in which they drew my blood. There was a bunch of paperwork and everything. Obviously, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you've already been arrested, but it takes a long time for them to process the paperwork and ask you questions and whatnot. And then eventually I was brought into a jail cell where I slept for the night. Some people have people come and pick them up from jail. I did not want to do that. I didn't want to talk to anybody or tell anybody what had happened, so I just spent the night there. And then in the morning, I was released and given a court date, fingerprints, mugshots in the middle of the night. I went to the city bus and I took a bus home. And then I walked to the tow yard because, of course, my car had been towed when they arrested me. And that cost $500 to get back, which sucks. Getting your car towed is very expensive. Some people can't afford to get their cars back. And if you're like most people, I think, if you're watching this video and you've already gotten out of jail and everything, that was the worst part. Like sleeping in the jail cell, truly worst part, peeing where people can see you, all of that stuff, gross. Sleeping on a cold floor with like a whatever kind of weird fabric they give you as like a blanket, that sucked. And of course, all the shame and everything. That's like the worst part. But I will say your experience of the DUI is going to, like every single thing else in life, depend greatly on how much money you have. If you have a lot of money, this is not going to be too much of a burden. But if you don't have money, you're obviously going to be going into debt. You have to pay for everything along the way, all the DUI classes and everything. So yeah, depending on your financial situation, as with everything, is going to strongly determine which part of the DUI is the worst, if it's the jail or the money or whatever. So after I got home, I was freaking out and calling people and trying to figure out what I should do. Should I buy a lawyer, like hire a lawyer? Like, what do I do? I don't know what to expect. On the internet, it says to pay for a lawyer, but then some people are like, well, if you're guilty, what can they really do? Just show up and plead guilty and so on. And you certainly don't need a lawyer. I did pay for a lawyer. And I don't regret it. I don't think I would have been able to handle the stress of like going up to my own DMV court hearings, going to the court and the judge, presenting evidence. Well, I wouldn't present evidence, I'd have to plead guilty. Figuring out all the different things that you have to do in terms of a restricted license and the paperwork and everything and the insurance and the SR22. It would have been more difficult for me without a lawyer, obviously. In terms of if I feel like I got a lighter sentence because a lawyer argued on behalf of my case, I honestly would have no way of telling you because I have no idea what things would have been like if I didn't have a lawyer. So the choice is up to you. Personally, I would recommend getting a lawyer highly if you can pay for it. My lawyer was $2,000. And there was a monthly payment plan for it and everything. But that's how much my lawyer was, $2,000. I've spoken to other people who have paid for lawyers that were like $4,000, $3,000. I met someone who paid $6,000 for a lawyer when I was in DUI class with him, which I'm like, if you spent $6,000 on a lawyer, you should not be in DUI class. Like, you should have gotten like Better Call Saul. Like, that is too much. Definitely shop around with lawyers if you can. But yeah, I had to borrow money and everything, obviously. Also, when you're arrested for a DUI, mail starts coming to your mailbox the next day in terms of people, trying to give you their services, lawyers, etc. Your mailbox will be stuffed of people talking about how you have a DUI. So if you live with your parents or something, like if you're underage, keep that in mind, like you're not going to be able to hide it. But after you're arrested, you have 10 days, I think, to contact the DMV about your hearing and everything. Otherwise, your license is immediately restricted. My lawyers did this for me. They went to the DMV and I was able to keep my license for another 3 months before ultimately the DMV ruled against me, which they do for like 99% of people. And that was when my license restriction began, which I'll get into the details of. Basically, what my lawyer told me in terms of my options of having a driver's license were, and it was honestly very confusing, was either I could simply not drive for 6 months, I could not drive for 30 days, and then apply for a work restricted license, meaning you could go from your home to work only for between 12 and 16 months, depending. And then the third option was to get a breathalyzer in your car, which you have to pay for the installation of, as well as a monthly fee for between 6 and 10 months. And what I chose to do was to just simply not drive because I couldn't afford to get one of the breathalyzers in my car. And I didn't want to have a restricted license for a year plus. So I was like, I'll just wait out the 6 months and not drive. I would take the city bus. I'd get rides from my boss or from coworkers' places. It was just what I chose to do. The other reason I couldn't do the work license was because I was constantly in between employment and I had moved like 5 times that year. Like my address was always changing and so was my place of work. So I didn't really feel like I had anything to submit to the court or anything to like prove where I live. And I didn't want to like give one employer when I was actually changing jobs and was going to have a different one. Otherwise, I honestly would suggest getting the work restricted license because what I have heard, and again, take it with a grain of salt, what I've heard is that even if you're pulled over with a work restricted license, the police are not going to like check that you're really coming to and from work. Like if you tell them you're coming to or from work, it will be fine. I've heard some cases where they'll like call your boss to make sure, but generally speaking, people can get away with still driving if they get the work option. The next thing that I had to do as a result of getting arrested was file an SR22 with my insurance company, my car insurance company, and that's like a proof of financial stability or something. It's not what it sounds like. You don't have to be financially stable to file one, but it's basically a sort of letter or form that you have to send to your insurance company so they know you have a DUI because your insurance rates will go up. I actually just had to change my car insurance because they dropped me at the end of the fiscal year because of my DUI. My new insurance is 20% more than what I paid beforehand. Some people's insurance will go up a lot. Some people can shop around and find a insurance for a similar price. It just depends. So that SR22 will stay with your insurance no matter which insurance company you have for 3 years. So your insurance will be increased for 3 years, just so you know. The next thing that I had to do in order to complete the process was apply to a DUI school. So my blood alcohol content when I was arrested was 0.14. That's how it showed up in the paperwork. Here in California, if you test between 0.08 and 0.2, you are going to be in a 3-month DUI program. If you blow above 0.2, you're going to be in a 9-month program. And if this is your second DUI, it's going to be an 18-month program. And so mine was a 3-month program, even though it was actually 4 months. I don't know why they called it a 3-month program, but whatever, I guess it doesn't really matter. And that was online. This is actually extremely lucky. I think they're keeping this in California. I think it's going to become permanent now that we're in a new digital age. But before the pandemic, there was no online school. You had to go to physical DUI school you had to take a bus to get there or walk or whatever, and you had to go to a real location. Since COVID, they implemented online traffic school or DUI school or whatever, which is what I did. And at the program that I used, which my lawyer sent me the program to make sure it was in alignment with like the court orders or whatever, because I don't think all programs are created equal, I'm not sure. My program was $694 spread out over 4 months, 4 monthly payments. And so in terms of what classes were like, the first half was super easy. It's just the teacher giving a presentation and you were allowed to have your cameras off. And like, they were just like, don't do drugs. This is what happens if you drink and drive, like, you know, stuff like that. And then the second half, you actually have to, you know, show your face, be in class the whole time, which is about 2 hours, talking about whatever topic it is related to drunk driving, as well as like talking strategies about what you should do if you see a friend who's drunk driving and stuff. It's actually not as bad as it sounds. I mean, it's annoying, obviously, but you at least get to hear other people's stories about how they got their DUIs. You're kind of like a little bit of a community in a way. So if you're stressed out, don't worry. You will meet people who are going through the exact same situation. And in the course of that, you'll realize that people have very different experiences with the DUI, as well as the outcomes and lawyer fees and everything that I talk about in this video. Like, there's a standard baseline things that are shared between everybody, but everyone's outcome is a little bit different. Something that surprised me in classes actually was a lot of people got their DUIs while sleeping in their car, like just sleeping in their car in a parking lot, like outside of a bar or whatever. Apparently that's illegal, even though it's like, bro, that's not driving. Like, if you're not driving, like, people sleep in their cars drunk so that way they don't drive. If you're gonna get arrested either way, it's like, might as well risk it and drive home. Like, it literally incentivizes the opposite behavior, but there are so many laws like that, obviously. But yeah, some people were required to go to like a Mothers Against Drunk Driving panel where, you know, the mothers tell you about, you know, their slaughtered or slain children and everything and how awful it is. And I've even heard one story of a coworker who had to like go to a morgue and like look at bodies and everything. I, for some reason, didn't have to do any of that. I didn't have to do the Mothers Against Drunk Driving panel where you talk to like victims' families and so on. But once the DUI classes were over, I sent my certificate of completion to my lawyer who like registered it or did whatever she does with that. And then the only last two things I had to do was go to jail and pay a large fine. When I say go to jail, it was like, because I had spent the first night in jail, I had credit for 1 day, but there was still another day's credit. But I didn't have to actually go for the entire day. I did a book and release, which basically means showing up, taking more mugshots, thumbprints, all of that. You're in and out within like an hour, minus the city bus time, which takes like, it just adds hours. I'm not in like a place with good public transportation. Like, you need a car here. But that served as my jail time, which I was very relieved for because I did not want to go back to jail. I'm like, I spent 1 night in jail. I'm like, this cannot be my life. I'm not being a criminal. Like, I'm not built for this. I'm not built for sleeping on the cold floor. No. But the court fine was the biggest cost of all of this. It was $2,414 for me. And yes, you could set it up as a monthly payment plan. I'll get into how much the total cost per month is after all of these shenanigans. But one thing you could do with this court fine, at least in my case, is you could pay for half of it with community service at the rate of $28 an hour. So that's like working at Goodwill. Some people do the trash by the highway thing where you get in the van and they dump you on the highway and you pick up trash for like 8 hours. But yeah, after it had been 6 months since my license was suspended, I was able to get my license back at the DMV. That cost, I think, $125. But after that, you know, with the classes being over and everything, I was finally able to put my DUI behind me, other than, like I said, recently getting dropped by car insurance and having to change it. But overall, the total fees for me, not including car insurance, because that's like going to be going on for the next 3 years and I might shop around for different insurances and so on. The total price for me of all of this was $5,734, which is a lot. And if you divide that by 12 months, it's $500 a month, basically. It's a little bit less than that, but there are other fees as well, you know, public transportation, the different things you're going to have to be doing now that you can't drive. And of course, the entire time your license is restricted, you still have to be paying car insurance and everything. You can't get away from that. But yeah, that was the entire DUI process. I know it's probably a lot, especially if you just got arrested. This is probably like way too much for you to take in right now and think about. Literally just take it one step at a time. Like, this process is going to fucking suck because it costs a lot of money and it's a lot of time. You probably feel embarrassed, ashamed, humiliated, etc. But don't off yourself. Don't do anything crazy, okay? This is life. It's what happens. You know, bad things happen and you deal with the consequences. You may go into debt from all of this, but again, that's kind of life. I mean, you got yourself into a hole, now you have to get yourself out. I mean, there's no way around it. But I just don't think you should get too overwhelmed, because I remember when this first happened to me and I went ballistic. I mean, I didn't know how to cope with it because I didn't know how to cope with anything at that point in my life, which is why I got the DUI in the first place. But don't do that. Just take everything a day at a time. Eventually things will go back to normal. You'll be able to drive again. You're not going to be thinking about your DUI all the time like you are right now. But let me know your experience down below with your DUI and everything, if you had a similar or different experience and all of that. I really hope that this video was helpful, because when I was going through this a year ago, I really wanted a video like this to watch. I'm also going to leave a donation link down below in case anybody rich is watching and this video was helpful for them at any point, because I am in credit card debt. This stuff is expensive, y'all. But if you're feeling generous, feel free to support me down there. If you get a Better Call Saul lawyer and he lets you off scot-free, maybe spare a little change. I don't know. But that's my video. Good luck with everything. That's life. Be glad you didn't hurt anybody, okay? And if you did hurt somebody, this is not the video for you, okay? Bye.